Hello, fellow educators. Welcome to the 13th episode of Teacher's Tint, a place to regain your strength after a long day, week, or maybe semester this 2023. I'm your host, Steve G. Thanks for your feedback on last week's episode. I received comments from teachers considering moving to other jobs who found the tips shared here quite useful. This week, instead of picking the response of one teacher, I am going to share the results of the poll that came with that episode. To the question, are you leaving your current school this year? 33% of teachers say they are. If you haven't voted, there's still time for you to do it until it closes on April 29th. Once again, thank you so much for your valuable feedback. Today we'll focus on a topic that lately has become important for many educators. Many districts, at least here in the US, are moving away from paying according to seniority or years on the job to performance related compensation. At Teacher's Tent, we don't intend to join the controversy on whether that is a good move or not, even though, of course, we have an opinion about it, but rather we wish to help teachers plan and think what to consider so they can actually score higher. In this episode, as usual, I'll share my 5 things which I believe will help us increase our chances of performing well at the annual evaluation. So, let us hope you enjoy today's presentation. Please keep sharing your feedback after listening, either through comments on Instagram or emails, in things you think would help a teacher increase his or her yearly score. So, let's talk about how to raise your annual evaluation scores. An essential first step is to know the rubric. No one can score high when they don't know what they need to do. Understand beforehand what's expected of you, and pay attention to the actions needed to reach the highest score for that particular domain. Look for keywords like, for example, teacher consistently establishes, that indicate how often that behavior should be present in your students or be noticeable in yourself. The rubric of my district offers 4 possible scoring categories: exemplary, proficient, progressing, and unsatisfactory, with scores ranging from 3 to 0 respectively. Using the question of how lessons are delivered, for example, it states consistently and effectively presents the content, consistently presents content, generally presents content, and presents content in a confusing way, showing, again, all 4 options. If you aim for an exemplary rating in that domain, therefore, you should make sure you're presenting consistently and effectively your topics on a daily basis. A second point, closely related to number one, has to do with what score you think you ought to get and what you do or say when you don't get it. Remember, guys, you're the gurus. And if you have followed the rubric, you'll know where you should stand. If you believe you should get the top score for a specific domain, remember you must also have evidence to support your claim. Just telling your evaluator everyone knows I do that is not enough to prove your point. Gather instead quantitative data that confirms and backs up your claim. Many teachers feel this is a lot of work, and it is indeed if you try to get it all in the last weeks of school. However, if you consistently gather evidence of your good practices and continue throughout the year, you'll have all you need by the time you meet with your evaluator. So, if you believe you should score high on one particular domain and have evidence to prove it, don't hesitate to express it to your evaluator. One year, I had a very demanding evaluator who was also very hard on herself. She was an amazing principal, very professional. At our meeting, she gave me my score, an 85%. I agreed with most of it, except that I believe I should score higher on a couple of topics. So, I very respectfully but firmly told her what I felt and presented her my evidence. She said she would reconsider, and a few days later she called me in and told me that my score was a 92%. I was shocked. It truly felt like an 100% coming from someone as demanding as her. I learned something new that day, that if I had not said anything and had the evidence to show it, I would have not received the score I thought I deserved. So, If you have worked hard, and I know that all of you have, be prepared to get what you think you ought to get. A third point to ponder, especially if you're a new teacher, is be patient. Don't expect a score of 98% in your first year. It is very rare that a new teacher obtains an outstanding score in his or her first year. We already mentioned here that during those first 365 days, your goal is mainly to survive and to accomplish the five things we discussed in episode 9 as essential. Remember? Now, if you're a more experienced teacher, on the other hand, start by being optimistic. If you feel defeated or overwhelmed by the many changes around you, seek to be an overcomer. That's the title of one of my favorite songs by Mandisa. It's called Overcomer. Listening to it when I don't feel very successful helps me refocus on my purpose. Also, even if you are experienced, remember you should not expect to jump from a 65% to an 100% in 1 year either. We know that growth takes time. Item number 4 to score higher is, I believe, focusing. If last year's evaluation was low, you probably won't manage to turn it all around in just 1 year. Try instead to center on just any 3 domains per year. As a matter of fact, I suggest you strive to concentrate on your lowest 3 domains from last year's evaluation. Use a T-chart to decide how you displayed each of these low 3 domains in your teaching last year and how you expect to do it differently this year. Focusing must also take place when you select your yearly training. Teachers have to take a certain amount of hours per year of professional development. Ideally, your staff development choices should spiral around these 3 domains that you have decided to concentrate on. We often feel drawn to attractive trainings throughout the year, but the question we should ask ourselves is, does this particular professional development session help me with my 3 domains? As appealing as the topic could be, if it doesn't, it might be wiser to just put it off until the following year so you can, again, focus and hopefully grow. A final fifth valuable element is to seek for and listen to master teachers. I am sure that in your campus there are educators who actually score high. Look around to see who those recognized and distinguished educators are at your school and ask them to please take you under their wing. Simply ask them how and why they think they score high, and then just be prepared to follow their advice. I've been asked this question myself a few times, and I just love helping others out. However, on a couple of occasions, I soon realized the teacher was more interested in venting with me his or her personal frustration with a specific situation than in actually listening to my opinion on how to become effective and score high on the evaluation. Asking for advice means you're prepared to listen and then implement what you're being suggested. You don't have to ask for help, but if you do, people will usually expect that you at least try what they're offering you as helpful. In conclusion, getting a good score on your annual evaluation is definitely not easy. However, considering these 5 tips should help, namely, know the rubric, speak up when you don't get the score you expected, be patient or optimistic, focus on your lowest 3 domains, even your yearly professional development, and ask master teachers for advice and follow it. These are the top 5 on my list that we have covered in today's episode. How can I score high on my annual evaluation? I would love to hear what suggestions would make your top 5 list. Feel free to email me this or other comments to steve at teacherstent.com. Again, that's steve at teacherstent.com. Or you can follow Teachers Tent on Instagram. Teachers Tent altogether, lowercase. In the meantime, please join us next week for our podcast's 14th episode. My students' parents are too invasive. Parents can be a blessing, but they can sometimes become a challenge. We will share some hints to consider to establish a good, healthy relationship with them or to improve a maybe not so great interrelation. So, please let me know in advance any ideas and tips you might have on this big topic. And if you're enjoying the show, please don't forget to let your colleagues and friends know about and bring them to Teacher Stand. We'll make room for them too. Have a great week.